Fix this engine and I'll marry you. The words land like a slap across the boardroom. Niall Brooks stands perfectly still, her hands resting on the edge of the imported walnut table. The V8 prototype engine sits between them like a centerpiece at a funeral, gleaming, expensive, and completely out of place. Caldwell Price leans back in his Italian leather chair, arms crossed, smile wide enough to show teeth. Behind him, 5 executives in charcoal suits watch with the kind of silence that costs nothing and protects everything. The air smells like metal and cologne. Glass walls stretch floor to ceiling, framing downtown Chicago like a postcard of power. Up here, 40 stories above the street, mistakes get buried under quarterly reports and handshake deals. Niall's work boots don't belong on this carpet. Her grease-stained apron doesn't match the polished marble. Everyone in the room knows it. That's the point. Price gestures toward the engine with one manicured hand. "I mean it," he says louder now, playing to his audience. "You fix this today, right here, right now, and I'll put a ring on it." He winks at the man to his left. Someone chuckles. Another clears his throat and looks at his phone. Nobody stops him. Niall's jaw tightens. Her afro frames her face like a crown she didn't ask permission to wear. She's 32 years old and has heard every variation of this joke. Different rooms, different men, same punchline. The heat crawls up her neck, familiar and unwelcome. She could walk out. Part of her wants to. The door is 20 feet away. Her dignity is still intact. She hasn't said a word yet. But if you've spent your whole life being underestimated, you learn something important. Rage is expensive, precision is free, and walking away only proves them right. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a room where everyone assumed you didn't belong? Where your presence was treated like a mistake someone made on the guest list? Drop a comment below and let me know, because Nell's about to teach a masterclass in what happens when you refuse to shrink. Price taps the engine with his knuckles like he's knocking on a door. "This baby's worth more than most people make in a lifetime," he says. "State of the art. Next generation. Problem is, she's got a little attitude. Keeps stalling out during stress tests. Our top engineers can't figure it out." He pauses, letting the word top hang in the air. "So we thought, why not bring in someone different?" The word different does all the work he won't say out loud. One of the executives shifts his weight. His tie is loosened just enough to look casual. He's younger than the others, maybe mid-30s, and his eyes flick between Niall and Price like he's watching a car accident in slow motion. He doesn't speak. None of them do. Niall steps closer to the table. The engine is a work of art. 8 cylinders arranged in a V configuration, carbon fiber accents, aluminum block polished to a mirror finish. Red fuel lines snake through the assembly like veins. She's seen engines like this before. Not in boardrooms, in labs, in private garages where billionaires keep toys they'll never drive. This one's different, though. It hums with potential. And something else. Something wrong. "You brought me here to fix it or to watch me fail?" Niall asks. Her voice is calm, steady, no emotion to give them. Price grins. "Why not both?" She nods slowly, like she's considering his offer. Like she hasn't already made her decision. The room leans in without realizing it. Tension pulls tight as a wire. Niall reaches for her apron, and for a second, Price thinks he's won. He thinks she's about to fold it, tuck it under her arm, and leave. His smile gets wider. Instead, she takes it off, folds it with deliberate care, and places it on the chair beside her. Then she rolls up her sleeves. "Open the hood," she says. The laughter stops mid-breath. Price blinks. "What?" "The hood," Niall repeats, pointing to the engine cowling. "Unless you want me to diagnose it through telepathy." One of the executives coughs. Another looks at Price, waiting for instructions. Price's smile flickers. He wasn't expecting compliance. He was expecting outrage. Tears, maybe. A scene he could dismiss later as emotional overreaction. But Niall isn't giving him that. She's giving him exactly what he asked for. He snaps his fingers at the youngest executive. "Jackson, pop it open." Jackson moves like he's been shocked. He fumbles with the release latch, and the hood lifts with a pneumatic hiss. The engine's guts spill into view. Sensors, wiring harnesses, intake manifolds. Niall steps forward and leans over the assembly. her eyes scanning every inch. Her fingers hover above the fuel rail, not touching yet, just reading. The room watches her like she's defusing a bomb. Price circles the table, hands in his pockets, performance mode fully activated. "So what's your strategy here?" he asks. "Gonna pray over it? Sprinkle some magic dust?" Niel doesn't look up. "I'm gonna do what your engineers didn't." "Which is?" "Listen." She places her palm flat against the engine block. Closes her eyes. The executives exchange glances. One of them smirks. Price opens his mouth to say something, but Niel raises her other hand. Just one finger, a silent request for quiet, and somehow, impossibly, the room obeys. For 30 seconds, there's nothing but the hum of the HVAC system and the distant sound of traffic below. Niel's hand stays pressed to the metal. Her breathing slows. Then she shifts her hand 2 inches to the left, pauses, moves again. She opens her eyes. "This isn't a software problem." Price laughs. "It's too loud, too sharp. Our best people already checked that." Niel finally looks at him. Really looks. And for the first time since she walked in, Caldwell Price feels something he hasn't felt in years. Doubt. What do you think Niel heard? Drop your guess in the comments. Niel Brooks learned to trust engines before she learned to trust people. Engines didn't lie. They didn't smile in your face and doubt you behind your back. When something broke, there was a reason, a cause, a solution. People were messier. People made decisions based on who you were before you ever opened your mouth. She grew up in Gary, Indiana, in a neighborhood where broken cars meant missed shifts and unpaid rent. Her uncle ran a shop out of a gutted warehouse behind a shuttered grocery store. The sign out front said Reggie's Auto in faded letters, but everybody called it Reg's Last Chance. If your transmission died and you couldn't afford the dealership, you went to Reg. If your engine seized and the bank was calling about your car note, you went to Reg. He fixed what others gave up on. Nell spent every summer there from age 12 on. At first, Reg gave her the boring jobs, sweeping floors, organizing bolts, fetching tools. She hated it, but she watched. She saw how he moved around an engine like a surgeon, how his hands knew where to go before his brain gave the order. By 14, she could rebuild a carburetor faster than most of his crew. By 16, she was the one people asked for. But the world didn't care what she could do. It cared what she looked like doing it. Her first real interview was at a luxury car dealership in downtown Chicago. She was 19. Fresh certification, solid references. The service manager looked at her resume for 5 seconds before sliding it back across the desk. "We're looking for someone with more experience," he said. The guy they hired 2 weeks later was 20, white, and had half her training. She saw him through the window on her way out, shaking hands, laughing, fitting in. The second interview, they thought she was applying for the front desk. The third, they asked if she was sure she wanted to work in that kind of environment. By the time she turned 25, Nell stopped expecting fairness. She started expecting proof. Show them. Don't tell them. Let the work speak, because your voice won't be heard anyway. Back in the boardroom, Price is still laughing. It's the kind of laugh that fills space, that marks territory. "Not a software problem," he repeats, shaking his head. "That's rich. Do you know how many diagnostics we've run? How many hours our engineers logged?" Niel doesn't answer. She's already moved on. Her fingers trace the fuel line from the rail to the injectors, following the path like she's reading Braille. The metal is cool under her skin, smooth, no corrosion, no obvious cracks. But there's something, a vibration, barely perceptible. The kind of thing you only notice if you're listening with your whole body, not just your ears. One of the executives steps closer. It's Jackson, the one who opened the hood. He's younger than the rest, maybe 30, with the kind of nervous energy that comes from knowing too much and saying too little. "What are you looking for?" he asks quietly. "Inconsistencies," Niel says. "Like what?" "Like why a fuel system this advanced would stall during high RPM stress tests but run clean at idle." Jackson's eyes narrow. "You think it's the fuel delivery?" "I think someone told your engineers what to find instead of letting them see what's actually there." Price hears that. He stops mid-stride. "Excuse me?" Niel straightens up but doesn't turn around. "You heard me. Are you suggesting my team is incompetent?" I'm suggesting they were pointed in one direction and told to stay there. The room shifts. It's subtle. A change in posture, a held breath. Jackson takes a half step back. Another executive checks his watch. Price's smile is gone now, replaced by something colder. He walks around the table until he's standing directly across from Niall, the engine between them like a referee. Let me tell you something, Price says, voice low and sharp. I didn't build a company worth $3 billion by hiring people who miss problems. My team is the best in the industry. If they say it's software, it's software. Niall meets his gaze. Then you wasted your money bringing me here. Maybe I did. The silence that follows is heavy, thick, the kind you can feel in your chest. Price doesn't blink. Neither does Niall. Somewhere in the back of the room, someone's phone buzzes. No one moves to check it. Finally, Niall breaks eye contact and returns to the engine. She crouches down, getting low, looking at the underside of the assembly. Her knees touch the carpet. Her hands move with the kind of confidence that comes from repetition, from muscle memory built over decades. She finds a sensor cluster mounted near the oil pan. 3 connectors. 2 are seated properly. The third is loose, not disconnected, just loose. A quarter turn from full engagement. She taps it with her fingernail. A tiny metallic click echoes in the quiet. This, she says. Price leans over. That's nothing. A loose ground. Happens all the time. Not on an engine this expensive. So tighten it and let's move on. Niall shakes her head. It's not loose by accident. Price freezes. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. This connector was intentionally seated just shy of full engagement, enough to pass a visual inspection, not enough to hold under sustained stress. Jackson goes pale. Another executive mutters something under his breath. Price's jaw clenches. That's impossible, he says. We have quality control. We have protocols, Niall finishes. I'm sure you do, but protocols don't catch sabotage unless you're looking for it. The word sabotage lands like a grenade. Price's face reddens. You need to be very careful about what you're accusing. Niall stands. She's shorter than Price, but in this moment, she feels taller. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm telling you what I see. What you do with that information is your choice. She takes a breath, lets the room sit with it. Then she pulls a small torque wrench from her back pocket. She brought tools just in case, and tightens the connector. 3 full rotations. The click is louder this time. Final. Run your stress test now, she says. Price doesn't move. His hands are clenched into fists at his sides. The executives stand frozen, waiting for orders that don't come. And Niall? She steps back from the engine, arms crossed, and waits, because she already knows what's going to happen next. Do you think the engine will start? Or is there something deeper Niall hasn't uncovered yet? Let me know below. Price doesn't want to run the test. That much is obvious. He stares at the engine like it's betrayed him, like the machine itself has chosen a side. His mouth opens, closes, opens again. Jackson shifts his weight from foot to foot, eyes darting between his boss and Niall. The other executives stay locked in place, expressions carefully neutral. No one wants to be the first to speak. Finally, Price forces a smile. It doesn't reach his eyes. You know what? He says, voice too bright, too controlled. I think we've wasted enough time on theatrics. This was a fun little experiment, but we've got actual work to do. He gestures toward the door. I appreciate you coming in. Someone from HR will send you a check for your time. Niall doesn't move. You're not going to run the test. There's no need. Because you already know what it'll show. Price's smile cracks. I don't know what kind of game you're playing. I'm not playing anything. Niall cuts in. You brought me here. You made your little joke. Now finish what you started. One of the executives, older, silver-haired, expensive watch, steps forward. Mr. Price, maybe we should stay out of this, Martin. Martin stops. His mouth closes. He steps back into formation with the others. Niall watches the exchange with the detached interest of someone who's seen this movie before. Men protecting men. Power protecting power. She's been the outsider in enough rooms to know how this works. The question is whether Price is smart enough to cut his losses or dumb enough to double down. He chooses door number 2. Fine, Price says. You want a test? Let's run a test. Jackson, pull up the diagnostic interface. Jackson nearly trips over his own feet getting to the laptop connected to the engine. His fingers fly over the keyboard, pulling up lines of code and sensor readouts. The screen fills with data, temperature curves, fuel pressure graphs, RPM thresholds. It looks impressive, complicated, the kind of thing that makes laypeople nod and trust the expert. Neely's seen cleaner code written by community college students. All right, Price says, arms crossed. We'll run a simulated stress test, 30 seconds at 7,500 RPM. If your little theory holds, the engine should purr like a kitten. If it doesn't, he lets the sentence hang. The implication is clear. If she's wrong, she's not just wrong. She's embarrassed, discredited. A cautionary tale he'll tell at cocktail parties for years. Niel nods. Do it. Jackson's hand hovers over the enter key. He looks at Price. Price nods. Jackson presses the button. The engine roars to life. It's loud, aggressive. The kind of sound that makes your chest vibrate and your ears ring. The RPMs climb fast. 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. The fuel lines glow faintly under the stress, red against black. 6,000, 7,000. The whole table shakes. Somewhere behind them, a coffee cup rattles against a saucer. 7,500 RPM, and the engine holds. No stutter, no misfire, no stall. Just raw, uninterrupted power. The sound is almost beautiful. Almost. It runs for 10 seconds, 20, 30. Jackson's eyes go wide. Martin's jaw slackens. The other executives exchange looks that say everything and nothing. Price's face drains of color. Jackson cuts the power. The engine winds down, the roar fading to a hum, then to silence. The room feels too quiet now, like the air's been sucked out. Niel doesn't smile, doesn't gloat. She just stands there, hands in her pockets, waiting. Well, she says finally, that settles that. Price's hand grips the edge of the table so hard his knuckles go white. This doesn't prove anything, he says. Could have been a fluke. Could have been exactly what I said it was, Niel interrupts. A loose connector deliberately sabotaged to fail under stress, which means someone on your team either missed it or put it there. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious problem. Martin clears his throat. Mr. Price, if there's even a chance, I said stay out of this. But Martin doesn't back down this time. Sir, if this engine fails during the public unveiling, we're looking at a recall, lawsuits, federal investigation. We can't afford. I know what we can't afford, Price snaps. He turns on Niel, jabbing a finger in her direction. You walk in here, make wild claims, tighten one screw, and suddenly you're the hero? You think I don't see what this is? Niel tilts her head. What is it? Optics. We bring in the black woman mechanic, let her have her moment, and everyone pats themselves on the back for being so progressive. Meanwhile, the real engineers, the ones who've been busting their asses for months, get pushed to the side. The air in the room goes ice cold. Jackson takes a step back. Martin's eyes drop to the floor. The other executives suddenly find their phones very interesting. Niel doesn't flinch. She's heard worse. But hearing it and letting it slide are two different things. Let me make sure I understand, Niel says slowly. You invited me here as a publicity stunt. You made a joke about marrying me if I fixed your engine. And now that I actually fixed it, you're upset because it makes your team look bad. Price's jaw works. He doesn't answer. Here's what I think, Niel continues. I think you knew this engine had problems. I think your engineers flagged them, and you buried the reports because a delay would cost you money. I think you brought me here hoping I'd fail so you could blame the outsider and move on. But I didn't fail, and now you don't know what to do. You don't know what you're talking about? Then prove me wrong. Show me the engineering reports from the last 6 months. Let's see what your team actually found. Price's mouth opens, closes. He looks at Martin. Martin looks away, and that's when Niel knows. She's not just right about the engine. She's right about all of it. You know what, Price says, voice shaking. I think we're done here. Security will escort you out. Nell reaches into her jacket pocket, slowly, deliberately. She pulls out a small digital recorder and places it on the table beside the engine. The red light is still blinking. "You've been recording this?" Price whispers. Niella picks up her apron, folds it, tucks it under her arm. "Every word," she says, "including the part where you admitted this was about optics, and the part where you refused to review your own engineering reports." Price's face goes from red to purple. "That's illegal. Illinois is a one-party consent state," Niall says calmly. "I'm the one party, and I consented." She turns toward the door, stops, looks back over her shoulder. "Oh, and one more thing. I didn't come here alone." The door opens. Two people step inside. One is a woman in a federal ID badge. The other is a man in a suit that costs more than Price's watch. The woman speaks first. "Mr. Price, I'm Agent Vanessa Kellerman with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. We'd like to ask you some questions about your quality control procedures." Price's legs buckle. He catches himself on the table. Niele walks past them all without looking back, and behind her she hears the sound of an empire starting to crack. "What do you think happens next? Is Price going down, or does he have one more card to play? Drop your prediction below." Agent Kellerman doesn't ask permission to sit. She pulls out a chair at the head of the table, opens a tablet, and begins scrolling through documents like she's done this 1,000 times before. The man in the expensive suit, his badge reads Inspector General, stands behind her with his arms crossed. Price hasn't moved from his spot near the engine. His hands grip the table edge like it's the only thing keeping him upright. "Mr. Price," Kellerman says without looking up, "how many vehicles in your current production line use this engine configuration?" Price's mouth opens. Nothing comes out. Martin steps forward, clearing his throat. "Approximately 18,000 units, Agent Kellerman, across 3 model years." "And how many consumer complaints have been filed regarding engine failure in those units?" Martin hesitates. "I'd need to pull the exact..." 47, Kellerman interrupts. She looks up now, her eyes cold and direct. 47 complaints in the last 14 months, all describing the same symptoms. Sudden stall during highway acceleration, loss of power steering, loss of braking assist, 3 crashes, 1 fatality. The room goes dead silent. Jackson's face loses all color. One of the other executives takes a half step toward the door, then stops, realizing how that would look. Price's breathing becomes audible, short, shallow, the kind of breathing people do when walls start closing in. Niall stands near the window now, her apron still folded under her arm. She hasn't said a word since the agents entered. She doesn't need to. This isn't her show anymore. This is consequence arriving right on schedule. "We didn't know," Price stammers. "If there were complaints, they would have been handled through our customer service protocols." "Your customer service department flagged every single one of those complaints for engineering review," the Inspector General says. His voice is flat, bored almost, like he's seen this exact performance before. "Your engineering team submitted 3 separate reports recommending a recall. All 3 were denied. By you." Price's knees visibly buckle. He catches himself on the chair. "That's not... there were cost considerations. Market timing. We had investors." "You had a legal obligation," Kellerman cuts in. "Federal motor vehicle safety standards require manufacturers to report defects that pose unreasonable risk within 5 days of discovery. You've known about this issue for over a year." Martin backs away from the table, slowly, like he's trying to become invisible. Jackson stares at his shoes. The other executives form a tight cluster near the far wall, putting distance between themselves and Price. Rats leaving a sinking ship in real time. Price points at Niall. His hand shakes. She's the one who brought this up. She fixed it. So there's no issue anymore, right? The problem's solved." Kellerman glances at Niall. "Ms. Brooks, is that accurate? Did you repair the defect?" Niall's voice is calm, measured. "I tightened 1 connector on 1 engine in a boardroom. That doesn't fix 18,000 vehicles on the road right now with the same design flaw." "Design flaw," the Inspector General repeats. He writes something on a notepad. "Would you characterize this as an engineering oversight or a cost-cutting measure?" Nell considers the question. She could soften it. She could give Price an out, but she thinks about the 47 complaints, the 3 crashes, the 1 person who didn't make it home. Cost cutting, she says. The connector I found was spec'd below tolerance to save approximately $3 per unit. Someone signed off on that decision knowing it wouldn't hold under sustained stress. Price lunges forward. You can't prove that. You can't just... Actually, Jackson says quietly, she can. Everyone turns. Jackson looks like he might throw up, but he keeps talking. I have the emails, the procurement approval, the engineering objections, everything. Price's face goes from pale to gray. Jackson, you need to think very carefully about what you're... I already thought about it, Jackson interrupts. His voice gains strength. I've been thinking about it for 6 months. Every time I ran those diagnostics and saw the same failure pattern. Every time I flagged it and got told to focus on software. I knew, and I stayed quiet because... He stops, swallows hard. Because I wanted to keep my job. Kellerman extends her hand. Mr. Jackson, I'm going to need those emails. Jackson pulls out his phone. His fingers tremble as he forwards the files. 30 seconds later, Kellerman's tablet chimes. She opens the attachments, scrolls. Her expression doesn't change, but her jaw tightens. Mr. Price, she says, you're looking at criminal negligence charges, possibly vehicular manslaughter. The Department of Justice will determine final counts, but I can tell you right now, you're done. Price collapses into the chair. His head drops into his hands. For a moment, he looks smaller, older, human. Then he looks up at Niel, and the humanity drains away. What's left is something ugly, something that's been there all along, hidden under expensive suits and boardroom smiles. This is your fault, he hisses. You came in here with your agenda, your recording, your federal friends. You wanted to destroy me. Niel walks toward him. Slowly, she stops 3 feet away. Close enough to be heard without raising her voice. I came here to fix an engine, she says. You're the one who made it about something else. You're the one who joked about marrying me. You're the one who buried the reports. You're the one who chose profit over safety. I didn't destroy you, Mr. Price. You destroyed yourself. I just refused to be quiet about it. She turns to Kellerman. Am I needed for anything else right now? We'll be in touch for a formal deposition, Kellerman says, but you're free to go. Niel nods. She walks to the door, opens it, and pauses in the threshold. She doesn't look back at Price. She looks at Jackson. Those emails you sent, she says, that took courage. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Jackson's eyes water. He nods once. Niele walks out. The door closes behind her with a soft click. Inside the boardroom, Agent Kellerman is already on her phone, coordinating with DOJ prosecutors. The Inspector General is photographing the engine from multiple angles. Price sits motionless, staring at nothing. And outside, 40 stories below, the city continues moving. People go to work, cars drive on highways, engines run clean or fail catastrophically, and nobody knows which until it's too late. But 18,000 people are about to get recall notices because one woman refused to stay silent. What do you think happens to Price? Does he face prison or does money find a way out? Drop your thoughts below. 3 weeks later, the story breaks. It starts with an investigative report on a local news station. Then a national network picks it up. By day 3, it's trending on every platform. The headlines write themselves. Luxury automaker hid fatal defect. CEO faces criminal charges after mechanic exposes cover-up. The woman who brought down a billionaire. Niel doesn't read most of them. She's too busy. The morning after the boardroom meeting, her phone started ringing. Reporters, lawyers, advocacy groups, other automotive companies offering jobs, a producer from a documentary series, 2 literary agents. It doesn't stop. By week 2, she has to change her number twice. But the call that matters comes from someone she's never heard of. His name is Terrence Okafor. He's the attorney representing the family of Marcus Chen, the man who died when his Price motor sedan stalled on I-94 and was rear-ended by a semi-truck. Marcus was 29, a teacher, engaged. He was driving home from a parent-teacher conference when the engine cut out without warning. Terrence doesn't ask Niel for an interview. He asks for her expertise. We're building a wrongful death case, he says over the phone. His voice is measured, professional, but there's grief underneath. The family deserves answers. They deserve justice. And we need someone who can explain what happened in terms a jury will understand. Niella agrees immediately. The deposition takes place in a conference room that's nothing like Price's boardroom. No glass walls, no Italian leather, just fluorescent lights, a long table, and a court reporter whose fingers fly across her stenography machine. Price's attorneys are there, 4 of them, all in identical Navy suits. They ask questions designed to confuse, to create doubt. To make Nell seem biased or unqualified, she answers every single one with the same calm precision she used on the engine. Ms. Brooks, isn't it true you were hired by federal regulators specifically to find evidence against my client? No, I was hired to diagnose an engine failure. What I found led to federal involvement. But you recorded the meeting without Mr. Price's knowledge. Doesn't that suggest premeditation? Illinois law allows one-party consent recording. I consented. And yes, I anticipated resistance to the truth. I was right. You've made quite a career out of this incident, haven't you? Book deals, speaking engagements? I've received offers. I haven't accepted any of them. I'm here because a man died and someone needs to explain why. The attorney sits down. No more questions. Terrence presents the emails Jackson provided, purchase orders for substandard connectors, engineering memos warning of failure risks, cost-benefit analyses that calculated acceptable loss of life in exchange for higher profit margins. It's all there. Documented, undeniable. One email stands out. It's from Price to his head of engineering, dated 11 months before Marcus Chen died. Push back on the recall recommendation. We can't afford the PR hit right now. If we get sued, we'll settle quietly. Cheaper than a recall. The court reporter's fingers stop moving for just a second. Then they start again, capturing every word for the record. When the deposition ends, Terrence walks Nielle to her car. It's raining, light. The kind that makes the pavement shine under streetlights. He opens an umbrella and holds it over both of them. Thank you, he says. Marcus's fiancée is in the gallery today. She wanted to be here. She wanted to see the person who finally made this public. Nielle stops walking. She's here. Terrence nods toward the courthouse steps. A woman in her late 20s stands under the awning, hands clasped in front of her. She's small, composed. Her eyes are red, but she's not crying. Not right now. She's holding herself together the way people do when falling apart isn't an option. Nielle walks over. The woman extends her hand. I'm Alicia, she says. Marcus's... Her voice breaks. She takes a breath. Starts again. I'm Alicia. I'm Nielle. I know. Alicia's grip tightens. I watched the news. I saw what you did, what you risked, and I just... She stops. Tears slip down her cheeks now, quiet and relentless. I just wanted to say thank you. For not letting them bury him, for making people see. Nielle's throat tightens. She's held it together through depositions, interviews, threats from Price's legal team. But standing here holding the hand of a woman whose future was stolen by corporate greed, something cracks. I'm sorry, Nielle whispers. I'm so sorry you lost him. Alicia nods. She doesn't let go. They stand there in the rain for a long moment, 2 women connected by tragedy and the refusal to let it be meaningless. Finally, Alicia steps back. They're going to settle, aren't they? Price's lawyers. They'll offer money and make this go away. Probably, Nielle says. That's what they do. Will you keep fighting? Even if they try to silence you? Nielle thinks about the boardroom, about Price's joke, about the 47 complaints and the 3 crashes, and Marcus Chen driving home on a rainy night just like this one. Yes, she says. I will. Alicia smiles. It's small, fragile, but real. Good. She turns and walks back into the courthouse. Nielle watches her go. Then she gets in her car, starts the engine, it purrs clean and strong, and drives through the rain toward whatever comes next. Behind her, the legal machinery grinds forward. Price's empire continues crumbling. Federal charges move through the system. Recall notices go out to 18,000 vehicle owners. Some will ignore them, some won't. The ones who don't might avoid becoming the next Marcus Chen. And somewhere in a federal courthouse, a file grows thicker with every deposition, every email, every piece of evidence that proves what Niel knew from the beginning. Engines don't lie. People do. Do you think Price will see prison time? Or will money protect him one last time? Let me know what you think. 6 months after the boardroom meeting, Caldwell Price stands in front of a judge and pleads guilty to 17 federal charges: vehicular manslaughter, criminal negligence, conspiracy to defraud consumers, obstruction of a federal investigation. The list goes on. His attorneys negotiated the plea to avoid trial, but there's no escaping the sentence. 8 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for 5. The courtroom is packed. Journalists, victims' families, automotive safety advocates. Niele sits in the third row, hands folded in her lap. She doesn't smile when the judge reads the sentence. She doesn't cry. She just listens, bears witness, makes sure history records this moment accurately. Price is led away in handcuffs. He doesn't look at anyone. His expensive suit is gone, replaced by standard-issue detention clothing. The man who joked about marrying her if she fixed an engine now shuffles toward a cell with his head down and his future measured in years instead of quarterly earnings. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarm. Nellie gives a brief statement. No theatrics, no victory speeches, just facts. Today's sentence won't bring Marcus Chen back, she says into a cluster of microphones. It won't erase the fear his fiancée lives with every day. But it sends a message. Corporate executives are not above the law. Profit does not justify negligence. And silence will not protect you when someone decides to speak. A reporter shouts a question. Ms. Brooks, there are rumors you've been offered the position of Chief Safety Officer at Price Motors. Can you confirm? Niel nods. I can, and I've accepted. The crowd erupts. More questions fly. She raises a hand, and somehow they quiet. Price Motors is under new leadership, she continues. The board has been restructured. Every executive who knew about the defect and stayed silent has been removed. The company is committed to transparency, accountability, and putting safety above profit. I'm joining that effort because tearing something down is easy. Building something better takes work, and I'd rather do the work. She steps away from the microphones. Security escorts her to a waiting car. As they drive through downtown Chicago, she watches the city scroll past her window, the same streets she's driven 1,000 times, the same buildings. But everything feels different now, lighter, like a weight she didn't know she was carrying has finally lifted. Her phone buzzes, a text from Jackson. He left Price Motors 2 months ago and now works for a nonprofit that advocates for automotive safety reform. The message is short. Saw the sentencing. Justice feels good. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. Niel types back. You showed yourself. I just didn't let you hide from it. 3 dots appear, then disappear, then appear again. Finally, a simple thumbs-up emoji. She smiles. The car pulls up to a small auto shop on the south side. The sign out front is new, freshly painted in bold red letters. Brooks Engineering and Safety Consulting. It's not fancy. No glass walls or imported furniture, just a garage with good tools, honest work, and a reputation that's spreading faster than any marketing campaign could manage. Inside, her team is waiting. 5 mechanics, 3 engineers, all people who were overlooked, underestimated, or pushed out of rooms they belonged in. All people who decided that being dismissed doesn't mean being wrong. Niel sets her bag down and pulls on her work apron, the same one she wore in Price's boardroom. She's kept it, not as a trophy, as a reminder. She ties it around her waist and walks over to the project they've been working on all week. A prototype fuel system designed to fail safe instead of fail catastrophic. If the connector loosens, the system routes power through a backup circuit instead of cutting out completely. Simple, elegant, exactly the kind of thing that should have been standard years ago. One of the engineers, a woman named Kendra who lost her job at a major manufacturer for reporting safety violations, looks up from the diagnostic screen. We're ready for the stress test. Niel nods. Run it. The engine roars to life. 7,000 RPM, 8,000, 9,000. It holds, no stutter, no failure. The whole team watches the monitors, breathing held, waiting for the numbers to spike or drop. They don't. At 10,000 RPM, Kendra cuts the power. The engine winds down smoothly. Everyone exhales at once. Someone whoops. Another person starts clapping. Niel just stands there, hands on her hips, staring at the machine that refused to quit. "That's how it should work," she says quietly. "Every time. For everyone." Kendra grins. "We're going to change the industry." "We already did," Niel replies. "Now we're going to make sure it stays changed." Later that night, after the team has gone home, Niel sits alone in her office. The walls are covered with schematics, test results, and photographs. One picture stands out. It's from the courthouse steps. Alicia, Marcus Chen's fiancée, standing beside Niel after the sentencing. They're not smiling, but they're standing together. Two women who refuse to let injustice have the last word. Niel's phone buzzes again. Another message. This one from a college student in Detroit who saw the news coverage and wants to study mechanical engineering. "I didn't think people like me could do this," the message reads. "But you showed me different. Thank you," Niel types back. "People like us have always done this. We've just been told we couldn't. Prove them wrong." She sets the phone down, looks at the engine on her workbench, thinks about the road that brought her here, the uncle's shop in Gary, the interviews where she was dismissed before she spoke, the boardroom where a man tried to humiliate her and accidentally gave her a platform. How many Niels are still being laughed at while holding the solution in their hands? How many Marcus Chens will die before the next person speaks up? How many executives will choose profit over safety until the cost becomes personal? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the work that remains. And Nyla Brooks isn't done working. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that one voice can crack an empire, then do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, because stories like this, stories about people who refuse to stay silent, who choose truth over comfort, who risk everything to protect strangers, these stories don't get told enough. And when they do, they disappear too quickly. Share this in the comments. Tell me about a time you spoke up when staying quiet would have been easier. Tell me about the person who inspired you to stop shrinking. Tell me what justice looks like in your world. Because every comment, every share, every story you add to this conversation creates space for the next person who's sitting in a room right now, being underestimated, wondering if speaking up is worth the cost. It is. Niel Brooks proved it. Now it's your turn. Subscribe, comment, share, and don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong in the room. The next story drops soon. You won't want to miss it.